There we go. You can hear me. There we go. So yes, the talk I'm going to be giving is, I came up with the title, Game Jams, Condensed Creativity, because that's kind of what they are, really. Alessandra actually asked me if I could do a talk on game jams, which I thought was really cool because it is like a passion that I have, and I love talking about them. So, just a bit of background. Who am I? Of course, I've had a little bit of an intro, but I've been in the games industry since 2009. This is my current team at the Chinese Room, but I started off at Electronic Arts, and then I went on to Creative Assembly after that. The Chinese Room are best known for a game called Dear Esther, which recently was re-released on consoles, being Xbox One and PS4, and we're re-releasing it on PC as well. And also less recently, but a more recent game, they've made Everybody's Gone to the Rapture last year. Prior to that, while they were working on Everybody's Gone to the Rapture, I was working on Alien Isolation, which was an amazing project to work on. And I hope if anyone played it in the audience, they enjoyed getting scared. Along with that, I'm also on the BAFTA Games Committee, which are a British awards body, but I help to run the awards by having meetings with them and discussing things. And we kind of get to work with a lot of people in the games industry, which is a nice addition to working within games. I also love games, and I love game jams. So this little image is kind of an amalgamation of game jam games that I've made up until, it might have been last year when I updated my website to add all of these on. So I love talking about them. And why do I love them so much? Isn't this picture cute? Finest game jam. I felt I had to use it, and the people were fine with me using it. So I've done a large portion of game jams. It's not that that's a massive feat. There's lots of people out there who have worked on lots of game jam games. But I feel that I have a good idea of how they kind of work, and they're saying I enjoy participating in outside of work. But what are they? I suppose they're condensed phases of prototyping, some of which then gets even more polished and becomes a final game. And the purpose they serve, really, is to create games in a short space of time, allowing people to be creative and think outside the box. A large portion of AAA devs don't really think of them as a thing. I did spend my first 6 years in the games industry in AAA, and a lot of people don't really consider them a thing, or they think, oh, I have a job in games already, I don't need to make games in my spare time. But there are lots of people who are interested in them and then don't know anything about them, so just forget. I have a few shots here, which is one of the reasons why I really like game jams as well. So this is one of my global game jam teams. In the middle is my twin sister, who does game jams too. She doesn't actually work in games development, but she works, I suppose, in a supportive role. She's head of compliance at Testology, who are an outsourced testing company. So she doesn't make games in her job, but she likes doing game jam games because it's fun. And yeah, so I have lots of fun shots of us all doing game jams over the years. And that's kind of, it's a more social thing to be doing than, of course, just playing games. Nothing wrong with just playing games, but you can also then create games on weekends, for example. Game jams don't have to be 24 hours or 48 hours, as you might think. They can be more or they can be less. I've done a 1-hour game jam before. It was very hectic. It was a show called EGX Rezzed in Brighton, and Rock, Paper, Shotgun were the judges. It was quite intense. But they allow you to work on a variety of things outside of maybe what you might normally do. So think of them as a good way of getting outside of your comfort zone. Maybe you just like making a first-person shooter, but you could have a go at making a platform game or a puzzle game or something without any combat at all. But yeah, I suppose the main thing is I like being around creative people, and game jams are a great place for that. So I wanted to just talk briefly about why game jams are bad. Not that that's like the main focus, but it's just something to mention. So they can be thought of as a break between your normal day job or between projects, but it's still work, so you don't actually get to rest. They encourage bad working practices. This is from a game jam. He literally passed out. But it's kind of under the kind of premise of crunch, which is a bad thing for the games industry because it's not good to overwork yourself. It can have a negative effect on the working week, because if it's on a weekend and you've got work on the Monday, you're not going to be the best person at work, or you might just be a bit grumpy. They could be draining, especially if things don't go to plan. And some people think of them purely as competitions as well. I don't really like the competition side of game jams, just because competition can make people aggressive and do things that they might not normally do, so I don't think it's the best way to approach a game jam. It promotes an unhealthy lifestyle. A lot of things I post when I do game jams are food shots, but usually I try and make my own things, so that's like cakes that I made and other various things. But sometimes as well, people go overboard. That was a shot from a game jam back in January that a friend of mine sent me. There was only 3 of them, and they had all that food. So it's pretty unhealthy. But you don't have to do that. You can be really healthy about it. And it's not always the case, because generally with negatives, you get a lot of positives. So game jams are great, as I've mentioned, because it's kind of like a prototyping phase. You can have creative freedom over things that you might not usually think about. It can give you a change of scenery. As I said previously, if you usually make one type of game, you can try something different. You can work on other areas of a game as well. So maybe if you're an artist, you could give audio a go, because the one thing that game jam games usually lack is audio. And along with that, they're amazing because the kind of age-old thing of kind of going to events and talking to students, they used to say, oh, I haven't got any games because we just made this on my university project. Of course, work you make during university is completely valid and is something that you can show. However, now with all the tool sets available for free in most cases, there's no excuse to not create a game, other than, of course, life commitments and not being able to do things. If you're a student, it can bolster your portfolio, shows how actively enthusiastic you can be about creating games, and it's the only thing that you want to do. Because sometimes if you only have your portfolio and it looks like you've just done, what your university told you to do, it can kind of have a negative effect on your portfolio, just as a little bit of advice. They're also great as well, because if you work in a job that isn't in the games industry, or you want to get into games, it's a good thing you can do, maybe if you put a weekend aside. It doesn't have to be when there's an actual game jam happening. You could just do it as your own kind of personal project, like Mike Bithell did with Thomas Was Alone. He just put a little bit of time aside, made a project, and it kind of went really well for him. And I suppose as well, if you're a small indie company, if you're making a game over a long period of time, your company might not actually show any, feel that they can show any progress of the game other than dev shots. If you made a game jam game, it could potentially get you some exposure on games websites, and that could then give you a little boost in followers or people then looking at your game. And then previously, talking about prizes, you can do it for prizes too. There's lots of game jams that give money. This was from Jamchester earlier in the year, where Unreal gave the best Unreal game either HTC Vives each or NVIDIA 980s each. And this was at the start of the year, so it was just before the 1080 came out. But if that's not a reason to use Unreal for a game jam, I don't know what is. But yeah, so not every game jam does prizes. Sometimes they do judging and allow a game to be the top in its category. And it's nice to get that recognition, but don't let it get to your head sometimes. So I just wanted to talk about some full games that have come out from game jams. My first 2 have a disclaimer, which they aren't actually full games, but I wanted to mention them because they're cute, fun ideas. But there's a lot of games that have been released from game jams. So this really cute game is called Scoot Scoot. It's a game made recently for a game jam called A Game by Its Cover, which is a game jam based off Famicom box art. And of course, back in the day, for anyone who used to play cartridge-based games, they could have some really elaborate cartridge art, which wouldn't really be representative of a game. For this game jam, it was almost the opposite, because all the games were really good. What I loved about this game, though, is the guy that made it is a biker, and the small amounts of detail that he went to on the bike's movement just kind of blew me away. Next up, Wobble Yoga, which is an amazingly lovely game and so charming, where you're literally just doing, I'm trying to think of the other game. There's a lot of games recently that, of course, have been using keyboard letters for moving characters around, and you're just trying to pose your character. This was made for Ludum Dare 35, and is quite cute. One that a lot of people probably know is Surgeon Simulator. This was made for the Global Game Jam in 2013. I was at the same event that year they made it. They had to cut out a few things. They used the casualty theme, for if anyone even knows what casualty is. So they had to cut that out, but Bossa did an amazing job on that and have made a fair amount of money, I imagine, based off of it. And all they did was they made it in a weekend and did really well. Keep Talking and Nobody Explodes, a game that was made for Oculus Rift, I think it's on Vive as well. So this was made for Global Game Jam 2014. They felt that a lot of VR games were very solo and didn't allow cooperative play. This game's amazing at doing that. One person has the headset on and sees a bomb. The other player has a bomb disposal manual. And it's quite a fun little game to play and really hectic. And they've released it as a full title. Gods Will Be Watching came out fairly recently. I say that it might have been like a year ago now, but it was made for Ludum Dare 26, which is a running theme in a lot of my presentation. The theme was minimalism, and it's a great little game, along with this one too, which was also for minimalism. This might look like Mini Metro to anyone, if anyone's played that in the audience. It was called Mind the Gap when it came out for Ludum Dare, but they released it to a full title, and it's done pretty well for itself. So those are like small kind of game jams, not within companies. But there's other games that companies have made in a similar kind of theme. So back in 2009, LucasArts made a game called Lucidity, which was made for what they called Dream Week, where they just made a game, or made prototypes for games in a week, and they ended up releasing it. I found out about this back when I was at EA in 2009, because someone worked at LucasArts, and I just thought it was the most amazing thing that they let people on the dev team make whatever they want, prototype something, and it actually got released. Fable Heroes is another example of that. If anyone played that, kind of a spin-off of the Fable series, but it was made on their creative day that they hosted, and then they made it into a full title. Don't Starve, also another game jam game. And then Amnesia Fortnite, which Double Fine do, is a great example of allowing your developers to be creative. Two of my favorites, Stacking, which is an amazing little game, came out on last-gen platforms, but people should give it a go, and then Costume Quest as well. Both came out of their kind of creative weeks, or fortnight, to make some games, and they've done pretty well out of it themselves. Then just another heads up on a last one, which was done recently, which was a help compilation. It was for War Child, which is a charity, and they had 11 developers make games over a period of 6 days. Of course, it then helped the charity for anyone that they sold. They put it up on Steam, and it was made by a wide variety of different developers. So it was just kind of a nice thing for them to do. There is like a full list of Game Jam games that have been made to full games on a website called themgames.net, which I found quite interesting because there were a few games on there that I didn't even know about. So anyone can do game jams. It doesn't matter what level of skill you have. I've got some screenshots here from games from Ludum Dare 26, which was minimalism. And it just shows the variety of games from different art styles, different game types. And you don't have to be an artist. A lot of the ones I picked did come up pretty high in the art category, and some of them look really interesting. But then there's also ones which, this is very minimalistic in style, but was top in the fun category because it had the best gameplay of a lot of the games that were submitted. So you've got 3D games as well, games that look like old computer games, to pixel art. There's a lot of pixel art, of course, Game Boy style games. This was one of the most minimalistic, fun style ones, which was like a rock, paper, scissors style game. To then, this is one of my sister's games. This is a guy I used to work with's game. And then I made a game that was basically like WarioWare that year. And it involved, you had to stick a fork in a potato. There's like a reason behind it. Potato was like a theme that was really high on potentially going through, so I thought I'd include a potato. Of course, games then differ so much as well as visually through gameplay, through audio, and as well as that solo entry, so one person making a game versus a whole team of people making a game. But just because you're maybe one person and you're not an artist or you're not a programmer, it doesn't mean you can't not try and make a game. Is that two negatives? Because there's a lot of tool sets out there that allow you to do things without being a programmer. You can use scripting systems like in GameMaker, which I use for a lot of my game jams, or you can use Unreal with its blueprint system. Of course, with Unreal, you kind of maybe want to go towards 3D, but GameMaker allows you to do 2D, and there's a lot of other tool sets out there as well. So, I wanted to talk about a couple of my favorite game jam games I've made. They're all very different from each other, so I'm going to have to alt-tab out and run things. So, my first weird one is called Babyface. So it was made for Little Diary 28, which was you only get one. So I went off the premise that your baby has one face when it comes out, which is a bit weird. But you'll see what it is when I run it. It's very weird. Disclaimer. I love adding sound effects as well, so it is a little bit noisy. So it's literally, you just press space. I'm going to turn it down a little bit. Oh, there you go, thank you. And you create your baby's face, so you can press it as quickly as possible. And you get, maybe not the best baby. You can get really cute ones, but it takes a little bit of, trying. When I was practicing my presentation earlier, I did get a cute baby, but I don't know if I will. I probably won't. Get a good mouth. There you go. That was kind of cute, right? So, for example, for that game jam, I wanted to explore using social media within GameMaker, because I played a game on the previous Little Diary where someone had a spot the difference and you posted a picture to Facebook. And I tried to do that, not Facebook, onto Twitter. I tried to do that, and it didn't want to open a web browser in GameMaker anymore. So I just ended up making you save a photo, and if you hover over this, it gives you a hashtag. So that's quite a weird game. Is it F5? No, wrong one. Shift F5. Here we go. Maybe I don't even need to go back to this. My next example is Little Diary 34, which was the first one to have two themes. So I had growing and two-button controls. And my game, if you can't read it, is everyone is a suspect in Murder Town. So I went with an interesting name. I might just run them all. So this was just after I'd gone to a talk at BAFTA, which Dan Pinchbeck at the Chinese Room made, where he was talking about everybody's gone to the rapture. And it kind of wanted me to make a game that didn't need any explanations except for this one bit here at the start. So you basically have two buttons. And all it is narrative. It's not the best narrative because I wrote it, but everything's just interacting.
I'm a bit late. What do we know?
We don't currently have any
voice acting.
eyewitnesses. We're still trying to find a lead.
Well, that's not very much to go on.
We've been very thorough throughout the whole scene, But if you really want to give it a once-over, you're more than welcome.
I'll do just that. Thanks.
Such a terrible shame when things like this happen, really. Perhaps try talking to his family, or maybe his friends.
I know how to do my job. What's this glass doing
There's
here?
like different things
Maybe
you can
this
interact.
was the break-in?
I'm like talking over myself. There was different things you could interact with and different people, so you could knock on doors and talk to them and try and uncover who killed the person in the game. It was the first time I'd written lots of dialogue for a Game Jam game, and it was kind of terrifying because I left the writing till really last minute on the last day, and then had to record all of it. However, my next game is one that we were all really proud of.
Press the space bar to start your adventure.
Which is a game that is made to be accessible to all people. So
Press space for the credits.
Actually, I'm going to close it right now because it's going to keep talking. There's just one button, which is the space bar, and the whole game is described to you through dialogue, and you can see it visually, and we have subtitles on the text as well. So if you can't see, you can be told what the environment looks like. If you can't hear, you can see what it looks like, and you only need to be able to press one button. It was for the Global Game Jam 2013, and there was an accessibility challenge, which was worldwide, and we kind of won it. I don't know how many entries
Press
there
the
were.
space bar to start. You are on a walk. Walking. Everything around you looks familiar. You are in a familiar place. You breathe in, take in the smell, hear the sounds, feel the ground under your feet. But something happens. Something is there that you do not recognize, and all of a sudden, nothing is the same as it was before. You find yourself in a strange place. Large, towering mountain ranges curtain the world around you as a plain field stretches out to touch the foothills of other mountains in your path. Each mountain has a wonderful smile carved across its peak, and on the wind you can hear the laughter of the peaks. Welcome to the Happy Mountains.
It's a weird game.
A creature approaches you.
It's coming.
Well, hello. You look
Of
different.
course, like a monkey
well,
teacup,
I
right?
suppose we are all different in our own little ways. But you look wholly not from...
So that game's amazing because we ended up doing, I think, 5 or 6 different worlds, and we had different voices for all the characters, and I did like, I can't even think of what it was, a terrible American accent for lemon finger bowl. So it was like for cleaning your fingers in, like you get in a Chinese restaurant. It was very weird, but it was a very amazing project to work on. And then, I don't know, I wanted to show another one quickly. I don't know if I can skip through the
The
title.
name's Dorito. I used to be sheriff till that apple turned sour. Now I roam the frontier, putting straight what ain't quite right. Seems there was this town.
Just gonna turn it down a little bit. So like,
But things ain't quite that straight.
I'm trying to think. So the Wise Choice that I just showed you was actually made at the same game jam that Surgeon Sim was made at. The theme was a heartbeat, so that's where they got theirs from, as was that with every choice that you had, there was a heartbeat sound. This game, however, was made for 2015 for the Global Game Jam, and the theme was, what do we do now? And so, what do we do? And it plays into the game, so I'm going to turn it up so you can hear it. And try and move around. I hope people get it when they hear it.
Dorito, now get it.
Turn that down and probably die. So yeah, we spun it on the fact that it's a Western, and the bad guys shout, "What? Dorito, now!" and then start shooting. So that was like a play on a theme. We also had lots of narrative again on that, and had a reload system with a gun, which was really nice for Game Maker, and it has a click reload. And then I wanted to show you one more game, quickly, which was made by my twin sister. I just like it because of how weird it is. This was made for the same one that I did Babyface. So you only get one, choose wisely, it's you only get one potato peeler. So you're literally peeling potatoes. But you have to be careful not to peel them too fast that you cut yourself, because then if you cut yourself, you have to put a plaster on. I think at one point, like, Yogscast played this, which we thought was quite funny. But I can't pick up a spud. Pick up a spud. It's not, okay. It's not picking up any more spuds, potatoes, sorry. But yeah, so game jam games can be so vastly different from each other, and they're a few of my favorites. And I'm just trying to remember if it was Alt or Shift. It was Alt. No, damn it, sorry. What's happened to this? There we go. Sorry, my computer's struggling. Oh, I don't know why I did that. Sorry, my apologies. Come on, you could do it. There we go. So I wanted to say about how we can try to introduce game jams with minimal interference. So for those, not that I think there's anyone here, of course, well, I don't know, who's in high school or anything like that, but during school holidays would be a good time. In the UK, we're trying to push to have programming done in schools now. So high school, it was something that we didn't really do before. So as an after-school club works really well as well, because we have things like coder dojos where we're teaching children how to program. A set amount of time every other evening. I know a few friends that do that to work on their own indie games. Have them over weekends, which is the natural time to pick. However, of course, not everyone has spare weekends if they're in a retail job, for example, or a job that demands you to be there over the weekend. But if you could pick off maybe 2 days that are next to each other. Have them during downtime, so between projects at your studio, maybe if there is some time where people aren't working on things, or maybe if all your artists are off the game now, you can maybe do an art-based jam where the artists try and do whatever they want, and it could end up being something really amazing. And then also it's great to do game jams within the development studio because you have all the tools you need. You can have office kind of usage throughout the whole of the time. Sometimes this won't always work if based off security, but it's something that can be quite nice and you're in the right environment to be working, and they can always order pizza. When we did Franco Jam at Creative Assembly, the kitchen was literally full of Domino's pizzas. It had a horrible smell after 2 days. I want to talk about the best structure in my eyes for game jams. So Ludum Dare and the Global Game Jam, which I have mentioned a lot, are theme-based jams. Ludum Dare has theme voting before it kind of occurs. This is really cool because then people have their own input into the theme that you're going to be working on. It's also bad because people look at the themes that there are and think, ooh, I know what I could make for that theme, or I know what I could make for that theme, I'll vote on that, and then hope that it gets through. Sometimes then it won't get through, but people then decide to still make those games, which in my eyes is kind of like preparation before doing it, because I like to just get stuck in the moment that it's announced and try and come up with some ideas. They're also good as well because they're team-based and solo-based. You can do the Global Game Jam on your own, same with Ludum Dare, or you can do it with other people. It depends what you're most comfortable with. But I do feel that game jams work the best when they have a solid theme. One thing the Global Game Jam adds, which is really nice, is they have these things called diversifiers. These kind of add extra structure to your game that might then set it aside from another game. I know over the years they've done ones like make it paper-based, so don't have a digital game. They did one last year which was a local game for local people, which was then a game based in the town that you live in, for example. That then allows it to be quite different to a game that was made in another country. I then just wanted to give some examples of trying to think outside the box when it comes to game jams, because that's something I like to do, which you might have noticed from my game jam games. So here's a lovely beach. This is where I'm from. This is where I live now. This is Worthing. But you can notice there's a few different things. So like, if this was a theme for a game jam, people might just think, a game on the beach, or water sports-based game. But if you look at the pier, there's a thing that says amusements. Maybe you could make an arcade game that could be in the arcade. Maybe you could make some kind of seedy murder game that's under the struts of the pier, because they're always really quite creepy down there. Or you could do something based, I don't know, a weather forecaster. It's a nice sunny day, so maybe you're trying to pick the weather and tell it to the people on the TV show just before it airs. I don't know, you can come up with lots of things. The same with this image. So this is from a castle near the south coast. A good thing that I thought was this, I took a picture and then realized something in it as well. So you could have a game where you're defending the castle, you could have a game where you're attacking the castle. You could be a butler. There's also a lawnmower in the corner. You could be a gardener. So you can make a game being a gardener on the castle gardens. As an example, to think outside the box. That's the best thing in my eyes when it comes to game jams, which is not thinking about what would first come to you. I have a quick slide about game jams that exist. So I'll just go through it quickly. So Global Game Jam, Lindari. Rainbow Jam happened recently, which was in Scotland, but it was open to everyone. But it was a nice game jam because it was to try and celebrate diversity in games. You get a lot of other game jams like that. Coming up soon, there's XX Plus Games Jam, which is for, men. It's for women, gender neutral, and transgender people. And then we also have interesting game jams as well. Not that those aren't interesting. Like the 0 Hour Jam, which happens. There'll be one coming up shortly, which happens when the clocks go back. So you're making it in an hour that doesn't exist. As well as that, then there's game jams like the Castle Jam that happened quite recently, Splash Jam, which happened on a boat, or there's Train Jam that happens on the train to GDC. You can find lists of game jams on itch.io, but then also on indiegamejams.com. And this shows, this image was actually taken back in January at the start of the year. That showed how many game jams were going on, and it actually scrolled down further. So there's constantly game jams going on, and sometimes you might see something that really interests you. I know back in June there was a Star Trek jam. Of course, it was not endorsed by Universal whatsoever, but there was a Star Trek jam, so if you wanted to make a Star Trek game, you could do that. And the same with a lot of them, I think at one point there was a cooking jam, and all these other sorts of things. So there's lots of game jams out there, and you should give them a go. That's my game jam attire on second day, when it's push. But then that's my old desk, but yeah. Thank you for your time. I don't know if there's any time for questions. Sorry to rush it all at the end. I think I spent too long showing games.
No, that's all right. I think we have time for a couple of questions, if anyone's got one.
Hi.
Hi.
Thanks for giving a talk. Have you heard of the Pippin Bar game idea jam that's going to start next week?
No, I haven't.
I think you may be really excited
Okay.
to start again. I've made a few. You talked about having a game jam at your company, or as a tip to do that. Have you done that for any of your games before you started, like Dear Esther?
So, disclaimer, I've been at the Chinese room for 4 months now. Okay. It's not a huge amount of time. But we have actually had, already a prototype week where we came up with our own little concepts. We split off into groups of 2s and then created prototypes for what we were creating at the time to see if we could come up with an idea of what we wanted to do. And that was really, really great and interesting. We want to do it again. And I think since I joined the company, everyone's like, okay, Catherine's here, we have to do a game jam now. And especially because we use Unreal. Unreal do a game jam every month as well. And so I'm like, hey guys, we should do this. I think it's saying definitely that as a company, we will hopefully do in the future. And I think it'd be great if other companies do it too, because it is great for kind of getting people's ideas out there, because sometimes some people might think, I have this brilliant game idea, we should do this, and doing a prototype or a game jam on that might either show that it is a brilliant idea, or maybe that it's not a great idea, so they could then kind of remove that from their mind and think about something else instead. But yeah, hopefully we'll do game jams soon and then create a game, because I know we were joking about releasing the prototypes that we made for people to play, kind of similar to what Double Fine do. So Don't know. One day, it'd be nice. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much.
Thank you.